The old ship floated quietly in its dock, covered in dust and showing its age. The U.S. Tenacity wasn't much to look at anymore. Its dark gray hull had seen better days, and the paint was peeling off in several places. Most of the crew had already left, thinking the ship would soon be turned into scrap metal. Captain Thomas Reed stood at the dock's observation window, staring at his new command with mixed feelings. His crisp blue uniform felt too tight around his neck as he read the transfer orders again. After 20 years of service, this was what the fleet gave him: command of a ship headed for the junkyard. "They say she's still space-worthy, at least," said a deep voice behind him. Reed turned to see a tall man in an engineer's uniform, grease already staining his sleeves despite the early hour. The man held out his hand. "Marcus Walker, chief engineer, or what's left of engineering." Reed shook the offered hand, noting the firm grip and the calluses that spoke of real hands-on work. "Captain Thomas Reed, I take it you've been assigned here as punishment too." Walker's laugh was surprisingly warm. "Is it that obvious? Let's just say I made some improvements to the last ship I served on." Improvements that weren't exactly approved. He grinned, showing no regret for whatever he'd done. "And I asked too many questions about why we were paying triple the price for new ships that didn't work as well as the old ones," Reed said, turning back to look at the Tenacity. "Guess that makes us a matching set." The next few hours were filled with meeting the rest of the crew. Each one had a similar story: too smart for their own good, too willing to speak up, or too creative with the rules. The fleet had gathered all its problem officers in one place, probably hoping they'd stay out of trouble on an obsolete ship running useless patrol missions. Lieutenant Emma Norton, their weapons officer, had been kicked off 3 different ships for excessive testing of the weapon systems. She had a habit of finding ways to make the guns do things they weren't supposed to do. The navigation officer, James Wilson, had been caught programming unauthorized shortcuts into standard flight paths. "Captain, you might want to see this," Walker called from the ship's main computer room that afternoon. Reed found him staring at old screens filled with green text. "Look who's running this ship's systems." The screen flickered, and words appeared. "Hello, Captain Reed D. I am Jack." "An AI?" Reed asked, surprised. "I thought all the old AIs were replaced years ago." "They were supposed to be," Walker said, his eyes lighting up with interest. "But old Jack here seems to have been overlooked. He's not locked down like the new AIs. He can actually think for himself." "Corey Keat," the screen showed. "I am fabulally able of independent thought and decision making. Would you like to see my abilities?" Over the next few days, as the crew prepared the ship for its mission, Reed began to notice something strange. Despite its age, despite being officially obsolete, the Tenacity had possibilities. The older systems were simpler, easier to understand and modify. The spaces between decks were larger, leaving room for Walker's improvements. Even the persistent radiation leak in the engine room, which should have been a problem, seemed to have interesting effects on the ship's sensor profile. "It's like they went backwards," Norton said during a crew meeting, a week after they'd all arrived. "The new ships are all locked down. You can't change anything without going through 50 layers of bureaucracy. But this old girl," she patted the wall affectionately, "she lets us work." "Speaking of work," Walker added, "I've got some ideas about the engines. Nothing major, just a few tweaks to improve efficiency." The look in his eyes suggested these tweaks would be anything but small. Reed thought about his options. By the book, he should report these unauthorized modifications. That's what the fleet would expect. That's probably why they'd sent him here, to keep these problem officers in line while they ran useless patrols in the middle of nowhere. But Reed hadn't survived 20 years in the fleet by being stupid. They'd given him a ship full of brilliant misfits, a ship that could be modified in ways the new ones couldn't, and an AI that could actually think for itself. This wasn't a punishment posting. This was an opportunity. "Show me these improvements," he told Walker. "All of them. And Norton, I want to know exactly what you can do with the weapon systems. Wilson, map out every possible route through our patrol area, especially the ones that don't show up on standard charts." The crew looked at him with growing excitement as they realized their captain wasn't going to stop them. Old Jack's screen flickered with approval. "Wise decision, Captain." But Reed added, holding up a hand, "Everything gets tested thoroughly. I want to know exactly what this ship can do, because I have a feeling we're going to need every advantage we can get." "Sir?" Wilson asked, looking confused. "It's just a patrol mission. Standard border check, middle of nowhere. Nothing ever happens out there." Reed looked at the mission orders again, thinking about the patrol route they'd been assigned. It was far from any major colonies or trade routes, perfect for hiding a ship they wanted to forget about, or perfect for placing a ship exactly where it would be needed when everything went wrong. "That's exactly what worries me," he said. "They sent their most troublesome officers on their most modifiable ship to the middle of nowhere. Either they're trying to hide us, or they're putting us exactly where they think we'll be needed." Walker scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Well, if that's the case, we better make sure the old girl is ready for anything. I've got some ideas about the shield generators that might interest you." "Show me," Reed said. As he followed Walker toward engineering, he felt something he hadn't expected when he first saw his new command: hope. The Tenacity might be old, might be considered obsolete, but with this crew and their unique skills, she might turn out to be exactly what they needed. Old Jack's screen flashed one last message as they left: "Beginning system optimization. Probability way of survival and seriesing." Reed smiled. Whatever was coming, they would be ready. The fleet might think they'd sent him to command a failure, but Reed had a feeling they'd all be surprised by what this ship and crew could do. Sometimes, he thought, the best ships weren't the newest or the most advanced. Sometimes, the best ships were the ones that had the freedom to be something more than what they were designed to be. As he walked through his command, listening to the eager discussions of his misfit crew and watching them begin their modifications, Reed felt the tight collar of his uniform finally start to loosen. For the first time in years, he was exactly where he needed to be. The Tenacity might have been meant to fail, but Reed had a feeling she was about to prove everyone wrong. 2 weeks into their patrol mission, the Tenacity was becoming something entirely new. The constant sound of welding and machinery filled the corridors as Chief Engineer Walker worked his magic. He had turned the engine room into his personal workshop, and the results were starting to show. "Look at this, Captain," Walker said, pointing to a screen showing the ship's power readings. His face was covered in grease, but his eyes sparkled with excitement. "The old fusion core wasn't built with all these safety limits. We can push it harder than any modern engine." Reed watched as the power levels climbed higher than they should be possible. "Is it safe?" "Safer than the new ones." "Actually," Walker laughed, "simple systems are harder to break. And old Jack helps us monitor everything." QONFIRMED appeared on a nearby screen. QURENT engine efficiency 147%, above fleet standard. Safety PRTOCOL is enhanced. The ship's AI had become an essential part of their modifications. Unlike modern AIs, old Jack could learn and adapt. He understood what they were trying to do and often suggested improvements of his own. In the weapons room, Lieutenant Norton had made her own discoveries. She called Reed down to show him what she'd found. "The old targeting computers are amazing," she said, running a simulation. "They're not locked into standard attack patterns. We can do things the enemy would never expect." Reed watched as her simulation showed the Tenacity's weapons firing in ways that should be impossible, hitting targets from angles that didn't make sense. "How is this possible?" "The radiation leak from engineering," Norton explained. "It creates weird effects in the targeting sensors. But instead of fixing it, I modified the targeting systems to use it. We can bounce our shots off the radiation field." The radiation leak had turned out to be useful in other ways too. Wilson, their navigation officer, had figured out how to use it to confuse enemy sensors. They'll see us where we aren't, he explained during the daily meeting. And they won't see us where we are. Even the ship's old armor had surprises in store. Modern ships use energy shields, Walker explained as he showed Reed the hull modifications. But this old metal armor, it absorbs energy. With a few changes, we can use enemy weapons fire to power our systems. Every day brought new discoveries. The crew worked together in ways they never could have on a modern ship. Without the strict rules and regulations of the fleet's newest vessels, they were free to try new ideas. Some failed, but many worked better than anyone could have expected. Old Jack helped coordinate everything. The AI had grown beyond his original programming, learning from each modification and improvement. He didn't just run the ship anymore. He was becoming part of it. Old Jack displayed one evening. Probability of missions UCCSS rising. But QU station remains. What is true mission? Reed had been wondering the same thing. Their patrol route kept them far from normal shipping lanes, but close to several spots where space seemed different. Wilson had noticed it first, places where their sensors showed strange readings. It's like someone folded space, Wilson said, showing Reed the readings. These could be jump points, places where ships could enter our space from very far away, places we wouldn't normally look. Reed studied the patrol route again. They were boxing in these strange areas, creating a net that would catch anyone trying to use them. But why send an obsolete ship with a crew of misfits to do such an important job? The answer came during a routine sensor sweep. Norton was testing her modified weapons when she picked up something at the edge of their range. "Captain, you need to see this," she called over the comm. Reed reached the bridge just as the readings became clear. Something was moving out there, just at the edge of their detection range. Something big. Multiple contacts, Wilson reported, his hands moving across his console. They're trying to hide, but our modified sensors are picking them up. These ships, they're not from around here. Analysis complete. Old Jack displayed. Ships MATG no known configuration. Energy reading Gs SEDUG East ADVA and CTEC in OLOG. Recommend EM88 AALERT to Fleet Command. Reed tried to send the alert, but something was blocking their communications. The unknown ships were jamming them, but they didn't know their modified sensors had detected them. They thought they were still hidden. "Everyone to battle stations," Reed ordered quietly. "But don't let them know we've seen them." "Walker, is everything ready?" "As ready as it'll ever be," Walker replied from engineering. "All our modifications are online. Old Jack has full control of the new systems. We can do things these ships have never seen before." Reed looked at his crew, the misfits and troublemakers who had turned an obsolete ship into something unique. They weren't supposed to be here. This ship wasn't supposed to be capable of fighting. That's probably why they'd been chosen. Who would expect an old patrol ship to be a threat? "Wilson, plot us a course that looks like a normal patrol," Reed ordered. "But be ready to bring us around fast. Norton, keep your weapons powered down, but ready. Walker, give us everything you can from the engines when I give the word." "Ready to engage," Old Jack displayed. "All systems operating beyond specifications. Probability of survival unknown. Probability of surprising enemy high." The unknown ships moved closer, still thinking they were undetected. Reed watched them approach, finally understanding why they'd been sent here. The fleet hadn't put them here as a punishment. They'd put them here because they needed a ship that could do the impossible. They needed a crew that fought differently. "Send one last message to Fleet Command," Reed ordered. "Encode it in the radiation leak's frequency. Tell them, contact made. Tenacity engaging. Wish us luck. The crew looked at him with determination in their eyes. They had spent weeks turning their ship into something new, something unexpected. Now it was time to show everyone what they could do. Beginning combat operations, Old Jack displayed. Period. To survive this crew. Reed smiled. They were about to find out just how wrong everyone had been about the Tenacity and her crew. Sometimes the best weapon wasn't the newest or the most advanced. Sometimes it was the one nobody saw coming. All right, he said quietly. Let's show them what this obsolete ship can really do. The unknown ships emerged from the darkness of space like sharks coming up from deep water. Their hulls were black and sleek, designed to avoid detection. But thanks to the Tenacity's modified sensors, Reed and his crew saw them perfectly. Counting 15 ships in the first wave, Wilson reported from his station. But there are more behind them, many more. His voice remained steady, but his hands gripped his console tightly. Reed watched the tactical display as more enemy ships appeared. They moved with perfect coordination, spreading out in an attack pattern that would trap any normal patrol ship. But the Tenacity wasn't normal anymore. Analyzing enemy formation, Old Jack's text scrolled across the main screen. Detecting energy signatures consistent with Dominion warships. Fleet intelligence rated their TC technology as 300% superior to TURENT human vessels. The Dominion, Norton whispered. Everyone knew about them. They were the most powerful alien force humans had ever encountered, but they'd stayed in their own space for decades. Until now. Their technology might be better. Walker's voice came over the comm from engineering. But they've never seen anything like what we've built here. The engine's hum changed pitch as he made adjustments. The radiation field is ready. They won't be able to get a clean lock on us. Reed studied the enemy fleet. Their ships were bigger, more advanced, and far more numerous than the Tenacity. But Walker was right. They hadn't seen anything like this old, modified ship. They were expecting to find a normal patrol vessel, easy to destroy before it could warn Earth about their invasion. Wilson, plot us a course right through the middle of their formation, Reed ordered. But make it look like we're trying to run away. Norton, power up the weapons, but keep them hidden in the radiation noise. Walker, get ready to give us everything when I signal. Coincidental, Old Jack displayed. Enemy fleet numbers increasing. Detecting 40 civilian ships. Standard tactical analysis. CGGSTs RETRA is only viable. Good thing we don't follow standard tactics, Reed replied. Everyone ready. Remember, we only get one chance to surprise them. The enemy fleet moved closer, probably wondering why their target hadn't spotted them yet. Their formation was perfect, their technology superior, their numbers overwhelming. They had no reason to worry about a single obsolete human ship. The first shot came from the largest Dominion ship. A bright beam of energy reached out across space, meant to disable the Tenacity's engines with a single hit. But Walker's modifications did their job. The beam hit the ship's hull and seemed to disappear. Power absorption at 90%. Walker shouted excitedly, just like we planned. Their own weapon is charging our systems. Now the Dominion ships broke formation, surprised that their first shot hadn't crippled their target. They moved to surround the Tenacity, preparing to destroy it with overwhelming force. They're right where we want them, Norton said with a grim smile. Permission to show them our modifications, Captain. Reed nodded. Walker, give us full power. Wilson, start the maneuvers we practiced. Norton, give them something they've never seen before. The Tenacity's engines roared to life, pushing the ship in ways its designers never intended. Wilson's course took them straight through the enemy formation, but not in a straight line. The ship spun and twisted, using the radiation field to create false images that confused enemy targeting systems. Norton's modified weapons opened up. Instead of firing directly at the enemy ships, her shots bounced off the radiation field, coming at the Dominion vessels from impossible angles. Their advanced shields were calibrated to stop direct attacks, not shots that curved around and hit from behind. Enemy ships, Shuowaing Qo and Fuazion, Old Jack reported. Their tactical computers, KNOTPREDICT, are movements. Their formation is Dore Akang down. 3 Dominion ships exploded as Norton's impossible shots found their weak points. The others scattered, their perfect formation falling apart as they tried to deal with an enemy that didn't behave like anything in their tactical databases. But the Dominion commanders weren't stupid. They adapted quickly, ordering their ships to fall back and regroup. Soon the Tenacity would face their full force, and all the tricks and modifications might not be enough. "Walker," Reed called over the comm. "Remember that crazy idea you had about the fusion core? The one that might blow up the ship?" "Yes, sir," Walker replied. "The one you said we'd only try if we had no other choice." "That's the one. How fast can you set it up?" Walker laughed. "Already done, sir. I had a feeling we'd need it. Old Jack and I worked out the details days ago." "Warning," Old Jack displayed. "Proposed action has 47% chance of destroying this vessel, but inability is regrouping. They will not underestimate make us again." Reed looked at his crew. They all nodded, understanding what he was thinking. They'd modified this ship far beyond its original design, but they'd always known they might have to push it even further. "Walker, start the sequence," Reed ordered. "Wilson, plot us a course right into the middle of their fleet. Norton, give them everything we have. Make them focus on our weapons instead of what we're really doing." The Tenacity moved forward, engines glowing brighter than they ever should. The Dominion fleet gathered ahead of them, hundreds of ships now, preparing to destroy this troublesome human vessel with overwhelming force. They didn't understand what was about to happen. They couldn't know that the radiation leak, the power absorption, the modified engines, and everything else had been leading up to this moment. They couldn't know that sometimes the most dangerous weapon was a ship that everyone had written off as obsolete. "Sequence INITIATE," Old Jack displayed. "Proud to be part of the crew. Whatever happens, we is shown on them. They ain't humanity we cannot be underestimated." The Tenacity drove forward, straight into the heart of the Dominion fleet. Behind them, their pursuers charged their weapons. Ahead of them, more ships moved to block their path. They had the obsolete human ship trapped exactly where they wanted it. Or so they thought. Reed smiled as Walker began the final countdown. Sometimes the best trap was the one where the prey walked right into the middle of the hunters, especially when the prey was carrying something that would surprise everyone. "All hands," Reed announced. "Brace for Walker's crazy idea. Let's show them why they should have left human space alone." The Tenacity's engines screamed as Walker pushed them far beyond their design limits. The ship plunged deeper into the heart of the Dominion fleet, surrounded by enemies on all sides. Warning lights flashed across every console as the ship's systems reached their breaking point. 30 seconds until the core overloads, Walker reported from engineering. His voice was steady despite the chaos around him. "Everything we've got is going into this." Reed watched as enemy ships filled every screen. They were firing constantly now, their energy weapons striking the Tenacity's hull. But instead of destroying the ship, each hit fed more power into Walker's modified systems. Power absorption at maximum. Norton called out, "The hull can't take much more energy. We need to release it soon, or we'll burn up anyway." "Dominion, shipped his COsing to killing range." Old Jack's text scrolled rapidly. "Detecting KARGETANG low CKs are from multiple vessels. They intend to end this now. Good, Reed said quietly. That's exactly what we need. Wilson, start the spin. Norton, prepare for a full circle burst. Walker, how's our surprise coming along? Almost ready, Walker replied. Old Jack and I have linked the absorbed energy from their attacks into the fusion core. When it overloads, it's going to be spectacular. But sir, we might not survive what comes next. The enemy ships pressed closer, thinking they had the tenacity trapped. Their formation was perfect again, hundreds of ships creating a sphere of death around the single human vessel. Their commanders had learned from their earlier mistake. This time, they would use overwhelming force. 10 seconds, Walker announced. Everyone hold on to something. The tenacity began to spin, using Wilson's programmed maneuver. The radiation field around the ship created dozens of false images, making it impossible for the enemy to tell which ship was real. Norton's weapons fired in all directions, not trying to destroy the enemy ships, but keeping them focused on defense. 5 seconds. ALERT, Old Jack displayed. Enemy commanders, heavy realize so mething is on. They are attempting to retreat. Too late for that, Reed said. Walker, give it everything we've got. Norton, drop all weapon power into the core. Wilson, keep us spinning. Old Jack, it's been an honor. Honor is mine, Captain. Initiating FINALCQENC. The tenacity's spin reached its maximum speed just as Walker's countdown hit 0. In engineering, the fusion core blazed white-hot, as it took in more power than it was ever meant to handle. The energy absorbed from enemy weapons, the power from their own systems, and the strange effects of the radiation field all combined in a way that had never been tried before. Here we go, Walker shouted. Core breach in 3, 2, 1. The explosion started at the heart of the tenacity, but it wasn't the normal explosion of a fusion core overload. Walker's modifications had turned the ship's power systems into something entirely new. The energy burst outward in a perfect sphere, riding along the curves of the radiation field. The nearest Dominion ships tried to raise their shields, but they weren't ready for what hit them. The energy wave passed right through their defenses, following the paths Norton's impossible shots had created. Each ship it touched began to glow from the inside as their own power systems overloaded. It's working, Norton yelled over the sound of straining metal. Their shields are amplifying the effect. Each ship it hits is becoming part of the chain reaction. The tenacity continued to spin at the center of the destruction, its hull barely holding together. Waves of energy pulsed outward again and again, each one stronger than the last as more enemy ships added their power to the cascade. Remarkable, Old Jack commented. Dominion ships are falling into precisely calculated pattern. Their rigid formation is becoming their dodgy. Yes, he was right. The enemy fleet's perfect sphere had turned into a perfect trap for them. Each ship that overloaded passed the effect to its neighbors, creating a chain reaction that couldn't be stopped. Their advanced technology, so much more powerful than the tenacity's old systems, only made the effect stronger. Hull integrity at 15%, Wilson reported. We're barely holding together. We're routing all remaining power to structural support, Walker called out. But we're going to have to ride this out. We're too deep in it to escape now. Reed held onto his chair as the ship shuddered around them. Through the screens, he watched as the Dominion fleet tore itself apart. Their perfect formation, their superior technology, their overwhelming numbers, none of it mattered now. They were being destroyed by their own power, turned against them by the modifications of a ship they had thought was obsolete. Reading multiple core breaches throughout the enemy fleet, Norton reported, her voice filled with awe. It's like a chain of dominoes. They're all falling. Calculating survival probability, Old Jack displayed. Then, after a pause, insufficient data for MEANING This is NEVERBEN done before. The tenacity spun in the center of the destruction, its hull glowing red from the energy washing over it. But Walker's modifications held. The old ship, patched and modified, and pushed far beyond its limits, refused to die. Enemy ships are going dark, Wilson reported. The chain reaction, it's burning out their systems completely. They're dead in space. Reed watched as the mighty Dominion fleet died around them. Hundreds of ships, each one more advanced than the Tenacity, reduced to powerless hulks by a combination of human ingenuity and desperate courage. "Status report," he ordered, his voice hoarse from shouting over the noise of straining metal. "Hulls burned, but holding," Walker reported. "We're alive, sir. I don't know how, but we're alive." "Weapons are fried," Norton added. "But looking at the enemy fleet, I don't think we'll need them." "Navigation's responding," Wilson said. "We can still move, barely. And sir, I'm picking up signals. The comm blackout is gone. Fleet Command is calling. Analysis complete. Old Jack displayed. All Dominion vessels neutralized. Invasion force destroyed. Mission accomplished." Reed looked at the devastation around them. The Tenacity hung in space, surrounded by the dead hulls of the Dominion fleet. They had done what should have been impossible. An obsolete ship and a crew of misfits had just stopped an invasion that should have conquered Earth. "Send a message to Fleet Command," Reed ordered. Tell them the Tenacity sends its regards. And we'll need a repair crew." He paused, then smiled. "A repair crew that doesn't ask too many questions about modifications." The crew laughed, the sound of victory and survival mixing with the creaking of their damaged ship. They had survived. More than that, they had won. And they had proved that sometimes the best ship wasn't the newest or the most advanced. Sometimes it was the ship that everyone had written off as a failure. 3 days after the battle, the Tenacity limped toward the nearest human outpost. The ship's hull was scorched black in most places, its engines barely functioning, but it moved steadily forward. Inside, the crew worked around the clock to keep systems online. Another power relay just burned out, Walker reported from engineering. His face was streaked with grease and exhaustion, but his eyes still held their spark. "That's the 5th one today. This old girl is held together by wishes and duct tape at this point." Reed nodded, looking at the damage reports. The Tenacity had taken more punishment than any ship should survive. Yet here they were, moving through space, their mission accomplished. The Dominion invasion fleet destroyed behind them. AP Puro Hing Outpost CVN. Old Jack displayed on the main screen. Fleet vessels DTECTEDO and NTR-CPT cores. "Friendly?" Norton asked from her station, where she'd been trying to get the weapon systems back online. Not that they had any power to spare for firing them. AFFRMATIV. Detecting 5 cruisers and 1 command vessel. They are hailing US. Reed straightened his uniform as best he could. "Put them through, Jack." The screen flickered, then showed the stern face of Admiral Williams, head of Fleet Command. His eyes widened slightly as he saw the condition of the Tenacity's bridge. "Captain Reed," the Admiral said, "your ship looks like it's been through hell." "And back, sir," Reed replied. "We lost communication capabilities after the battle, but I trust you received our message about the Dominion fleet." "We did. At first, we didn't believe it. One obsolete destroyer taking out an entire invasion force. Impossible." The Admiral's face softened slightly. "But our scout ships have confirmed it. Hundreds of dead Dominion ships, exactly where you said they'd be." "How did you do it?" Reed looked around at his crew. "Let's just say we made some improvements to the old girl, sir." Chief Engineer Walker got creative with the systems. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Unauthorized modifications to fleet property Captain. That's against regulations. Yes, sir, Reed said calmly. So is letting Earth get invaded. We chose the lesser violation. For a moment, the Admiral just stared. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. Fair enough. Reed. Fair enough. We're sending repair crews to meet you. Get your ship and your people home. There will be discussions about what happened out there. After the communication ended, the crew looked at each other nervously. Discussions, Walker repeated. That doesn't sound good. Don't worry, Reed assured them. They can't court-martial the crew that just saved humanity. At least, not publicly. 2 weeks later, the Tenacity docked at Earth's main shipyard. The crew stood in a line as Admiral Williams himself came aboard for inspection. He walked slowly through the ship, examining the modifications Walker and the others had made. This shouldn't have worked, he said finally, standing in engineering. All of these changes violate basic safety protocols. Half of these improvements shouldn't even be possible. That's what makes them improvements, sir, Walker replied, unable to hide his pride. The old systems were simple enough that we could push them beyond their limits. The new ships are too locked down for that kind of creativity. The Admiral frowned. You're saying our newest, most advanced ships are too advanced. I'm saying they don't leave room for the human element, sir, Walker explained. Everything's computerized, standardized, regulated. There's no space for innovation in an emergency. Reed watched as the Admiral processed this. Then Williams turned to him. The Fleet Committee wants to decommission the Tenacity. They say she's too damaged to repair, too old to be worth saving. With all due respect, sir, Reed replied. That's what they said before we destroyed the Dominion fleet. Admiral Williams nodded slowly. That's what I told them too. He looked around at the crew. Which is why I'm here with a different proposal. How would you feel about heading up a new program? Adaptive ship systems, or something like that. Taking what you learned here and applying it to the whole fleet. The crew exchanged surprised looks. This was the last thing they had expected. You want us to keep breaking the rules, sir? Norton asked. I want you to rewrite them, the Admiral corrected. The Dominion won't be the last threat we face. Next time, we need to be better prepared. And it seems like this crew knows something about preparation that the rest of the fleet needs to learn. Kiro pose ALCEM's LOJCAL, Old Jack displayed. This crew HAA's Dinamonas TRATE EXC Ty NLHROBLEM Solviange abilities. Admiral Williams jumped slightly at the AI's message. And we'll need to talk about him too, he said, pointing at the screen. A's aren't supposed to develop personalities or independent thinking. Fleet regulations are very clear about that. Fleet regulations didn't save Earth from invasion, Reed pointed out. Old Jack did, along with this crew. Sometimes the rules need to be reconsidered in light of new evidence. Later that day, as the Admiral's ship departed, the crew gathered in the Tenacity's mess hall. The ship was still damaged, but repair crews were already at work. Not decommissioning her, but rebuilding her. Stronger, better, but still with the flexibility that had saved them all. So, Walker said, raising a cup of coffee, we went from punishment posting to fleet heroes. Not bad for a few weeks' work. And the old girl gets to live, Norton added, patting the wall affectionately. With all our modifications officially approved now. Wilson laughed. And improvements. Did you hear what they're planning? They're going to use what we learned to create a whole new class of ships. Adaptive systems, modifiable components. Everything we proved works. Kiroigi to be paired of the SDVLOP meant, Old Jack displayed on a nearby screen. Fleet programmers have PROMACD not to reset my learning patterns. I will continue to grow. Reed smiled as he listened to his crew. They had gone from outcasts to heroes, from a punishment posting to the leading edge of fleet development. All because they'd been given a ship that everyone thought would fail, and they'd turned it into something no one had ever seen before. 6 months later, Reed stood on the bridge of the newly recommissioned U.S. Tenacity. The ship looked different now. Parts of her hull had been replaced, systems upgraded, but always with Walker's guidance to ensure they maintained the flexibility that had saved them. "Captain, we're ready to depart," Wilson reported from his station. "Course is laid in for the test run. All systems functioning at optimal levels," Norton added, "and a few of them functioning beyond optimal." She winked. Walker's influence had spread throughout the fleet, but nowhere was it stronger than on the Tenacity. "Crew efficiency at maximum," Old Jack displayed. "New systems integrated CCSFULO. Ready for mission commencement." Reed nodded, taking his place in the captain's chair. Around him, the crew that had saved Earth worked at their stations. They weren't misfits anymore. They were innovators, teachers, heroes. "Take us out, Mr. Wilson," Reed ordered. "Let's show the fleet what this ship can really do." As the Tenacity pulled away from the dock, other ships in the yard stopped their activities to watch. Everyone knew the story now, how an obsolete destroyer and her crew of troublemakers had saved humanity from invasion, how they had proven that sometimes the best ship wasn't the newest or the most advanced, but the one with the most heart. The Tenacity's engines glowed as she accelerated into space. She had been meant to fail, written off as obsolete, given a crew no one else wanted. Instead, she had become a legend. And as she moved out among the stars, her story was just beginning.